In a small fishing town on the seashore, a young man named Chris stood on the edge of the pier, watching a boat tossed by the waves. The boat sped towards the mainland as if it had lost control. Suddenly, a woman named Stella fell into the sea. It all started with the noise and movement around the harbor bridge. Chris noticed Stella busy delivering food to them on the boat with a friendly smile and quick steps. Stella managed to catch Chris's attention at first sight. Chris kept watching her every move until he finally dared to get to know her. From their short conversation, Chris began to feel that there was something special about Stella. That night, a folk festival was held on the beach, given a special vitality by the melodies of music, dancing, and the lights that decorated the coast. In the midst of the party, Chris saw a man dressed in a squid costume harshly insulting Stella. Chris's anger reached its peak. Without hesitation, he immediately approached him and hit him in front of the festival visitors. The next morning, as Chris was preparing his boat to sail, Stella approached him on the pier. At that moment, Chris also invited her to join him in installing several buoys out in the open sea, and despite Stella's hesitation, she eventually accepted the invitation. After the work was finished, Stella decided to jump into the sea and swim toward the mainland, and when she saw Chris immediately following her, they swam through the calm waves. The cold sea air and the clear sky heightened their feeling of closeness, and they reached an empty house on the beach in a quiet and peaceful atmosphere. Stella kept staring at Chris with intense emotions as if she wanted to say something she was hiding. Chris tried to change the atmosphere by bringing a cup of a warm drink to Stella, but the silence between them actually turned into a deeper closeness, until they experienced romantic moments. On their way back home by boat, the memory of the moment he tried to save Stella, who had fallen from the boat, flashed into Chris's mind. That memory made him realize more and more how much he cared for Stella. The next day, in literature class, Stella stood before the students as a teacher, while Chris sat quietly watching her from among the audience. Despite his attempts to appear normal, Stella secretly tried to hide her interest in Chris so as not to arouse suspicion. A few days later, Chris took Stella in his car and left the coastal village so that they wouldn't be seen by the villagers who had begun to notice their closeness. They then spent some time on the deserted beach, but unexpectedly, some of Chris's friends playing ball on the shore saw them. Nonetheless, that could not dampen the strong feelings that had grown between Chris and Stella. Behind that happiness, Chris was always burdened by the fear of losing Stella, a feeling that kept echoing in his mind for no clear reason. After some time, in one of the classes, Chris began to imagine himself proving to everyone that he truly loved Stella. In his daydreams, he imagined having the courage to express his feelings in front of any person. But when Chris's daydreams were interrupted, he answered Stella's question incorrectly. Stella was annoyed by his distraction and scolded him loudly in front of her friends, which suddenly silenced the classroom. The next day, Chris went to Stella's house, and there Stella emphasized to him the need to be cautious because she did not want anyone to know about their relationship. Chris then suggested they meet on a deserted island, a place she thought was safe, away from people's eyes. But shortly after that conversation, Stella received a call from a friend inviting her to sail together, and shortly after that, Chris and Stella were seen on the deserted island. Happiness was obvious as they swam, exchanged jokes, and relaxed on the quiet beach. For a moment, they felt as if the world belonged to them alone. But suddenly, painful memories returned to Chris's mind of when he accompanied Stella in the ambulance. The memory was vague, but it left him with an anxiety that was difficult to explain. That night, when he returned to the beach by boat, a man secretly watched Chris and Stella's arrival from afar, and his looks were full of suspicion as if he knew something about their relationship. After some time, delegations from the state visited their village, and on that occasion, Stella invited Chris and introduced him to the delegations. Chris felt proud to be by Stella's side, even though he kept his composure so as not to attract attention. That night, during dinner with Chris's family, he expressed to his father his desire to buy an empty house on a remote island because he wanted to live there. His father liked the idea and supported Chris's dream, but his mother strongly rejected it, considering it risky and illogical. Shortly after, Chris returned to that meeting. Stella revealed her desire to immediately go on a sea voyage with her friends. Hearing this, doubts began to fill Chris regarding the future of their relationship, as he feared that distance and time would separate them forever. The next morning, Chris woke up on his boat and saw Stella sailing away with her friends. Feeling a deep emptiness, Chris went to an empty house on the island and lived his days as usual in silence. He wrote a letter to Stella, pouring out all the feelings that were difficult for him to express directly. but the memories of the hospital returned to his mind, of when he took Stella there with a face full of anxiety, and that memory haunted him more and more. Shortly after, Chris visited Stella in the hospital with his friends and a number of his professors. At that moment, Chris was silent as he stared at Stella, who was lying weak on the bed, not daring to show his feelings in front of others. When they sang a song to encourage Stella, the woman only cried while staring at Chris in silence. Stella realized that they had promised to keep their relationship a secret from everyone. After leaving the room, one of the campus leaders approached Chris and said he suspected there was a special relationship between him and Stella. Hearing this, Chris remained silent, unable to utter a word. That night, he had a nightmare about Stella, so he went secretly to the hospital to look for her, but after searching her room, he found she was gone. Chris asked a nurse, and she remained silent with a look of pity, as if explaining to him the bitter truth of Stella's death without words. Heartbroken, Chris went to Stella's house and met her father there. Her father gave him a letter she had entrusted to him. At the end of the story, Chris went out in his boat and from afar saw Stella's family scattering her ashes in the calm sea. In that solitude, Chris opened Stella's letter. Inside, he found a picture of a dolphin and a small note that read, "With love, our warm feelings will remain eternal, Stella." If you liked the movie, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell button to receive everything new we offer.